Okay, so most of you are probably familiar with the Manosphere, and more specifically, the Red Pill community. Now I know these get crapped on by the left, but the truth is, the dating and relationship advice coming from the Manosphere is generally legitimate. This is also true specifically in the Red Pill community. The problem is that the Red Pill community adds a lot of bathwater and removes some of the baby. But I'll circle back to that in a future video. This video isn't about dating advice coming from the Red Pill community, but rather the way some of them, like Richard Cooper, try and pawn off scientific illiteracy and a lack of critical thinking as being masculine. I'm guessing these guys have maxed out the number of members they can gain by blaming feminism for the uptick in sexless men and now have to pivot to other grifts. For Rich's part, I suspect he's playing a character. There is an obvious overlap between the sexless men and those who are prone to conspiracy theories. I don't say this as some sort of brouhaha. This is a real problem that no doubt has overlaps with the growing fentanyl addiction. My annoyance is that hacks like Cooper are exploiting legitimate suffering. My problem isn't with those poor souls stuck in a difficult situation. As always, my problem is with the charlatans who monetize their confusion. For this video, I'm not going to get into the crappy dating advice espoused by the Red Pill hacks. That said, I will say this. If you need dating advice, you'll be much better served by checking out Alexis's Mindful Attraction channel, which is all baby with no bathwater. I have no relationship or affiliation with this channel. I just want to point confused men in the right direction before I tear into Rich Cooper. Well, enough babbling on my part. Let's get to it.
Here we go!
Yeah, I just want to
So the world's on fire, huh?
The world is on fire.
That's what they say.
And it's global warming. It's global warming.
That's what they say. What do you think about all that?
Right. Never mind the scientific consensus that the increase in frequency and intensity of fires and, not to mention, other catastrophes around the world are due to climate change, and that this was predicted decades ago. Insurance companies are beginning to pull out of disaster coverage as these disasters intensify. The military is warning that the droughts and famines caused by climate change will lead to a growing number of resource wars.
Fires with them. So we had a little bit of a training session, and we learned that there's really only three sources of forest fires. So the stuff that you guys see today, it only comes from three places: lightning strikes, sparks that come off of improperly maintained or aligned rail lines or tracks on trains, or human negligence. And human negligence doesn't cause that many forest fires.
All 10 Canadian provinces are experiencing abnormal dryness and moderate or severe droughts. The increase in dryness also makes the human negligence variable worse, since it increases the chances that someone's campfire or cigarette or other mini fire quickly gets out of control.
And I saw this satellite imagery over Quebec on where all the fires started. And I'm actually surprised that they released this, because this told me exactly what happened. There was something like 9 to 11 fires that all started at the exact time. So it was time-lapse video. Not a single cloud in the sky. Okay, so that rules out lightning. What are the chances of trains, sparks coming off mismanaged lines and tracks simultaneously in 11 different locations starting those fires? I'd say almost nil. And I would probably argue that there is almost like no or any rail lines near those areas. So that rules out lightning, and it rules out trains, which means it's got to be humans that started the fires. Right. And I've never seen like the amount of fires that we have burning in Canada right now that we do this year in any other past year, which tells me they were started intentionally. That's what I think. So why would they do that? It's to fearmonger, and it's to argue for more taxation and carbon taxes and more taxes for this, that, and the other thing, because that's part of the global agenda, right? Like that's part of the, they tried the scamdemic and that worked for a few years, right? And it's like, okay, we have to try to control people with something new, something more scary, something, the world is on fire because of global warming. Bullshit. It's cold as fuck here in the summertime now. It's not even that warm.
Assuming that he really saw and is honestly conveying an accurate representation of the time and location of the fires starting, and that he understood what he saw on the supposed time-lapse map, that he really knows where clouds were and weren't, and has any idea where rail lines are located relative to the fires. How about this? Maybe a few fires came from human negligence, another few from rail lines, and another few came from dryness and record temperatures. But to be honest, I'm not assuming that he's accurately conveying anything. I'm willing to bet that he's pulling this out of his ass. But why explain all of this when you can just lead your audience to believe that this is all part of the Illuminati's plan to place us all in concentration camps?
Well, how interesting that in 2020 was, I believe, a worldwide low for forest fires.
Yeah.
Interesting that during those years, everyone was made to be inside in a way.
Everyone's locked down.
That's not interesting, that's predictable. If humans are causing half of the forest fires in Canada, obviously forest fires are going to plummet when people aren't allowed to visit those forests. What's fascinating is how this person seems to think that both a drop and an increase in forest fires are part of the same conspiracy.
From my understanding is that there was a program where they would clear fuel from the forests to make sure that there wasn't dead branches, light grass, all of that that's going to go up. And they really scaled back on that heavily. So I think that's a component to it.
Yes, this is due to budget cuts in firefighting, thanks to Canada's Conservative Party. And here's the kicker. The same people who lash out against big government and want to reduce government funding turn around and complain that suddenly they're not seeing the fire prevention measures that used to happen. And by the way, this is an important thing to note. There seems to be a real lack of support for fire prevention, with all of the focus being on responding to fires, which is where the budgets are really being focused. But of course, if you're going to starve your fire prevention measures, you're going to have to spend that much more in responding to fires, which is more expensive. And that's not even taking into the account the damage caused by the fires themselves.
There's some forest management in that area, but forest fires have always happened, right? Like it's a natural part of the world, and climate changes, right? Like climate has always changed. I don't think it should be called climate change or global warming. Climate's change.
No.
Right? Like 12,800 years ago, we had a massive ice age, and there was a significant they say meteor impact in different parts of the world. It probably broke up the atmosphere. And we've had climate change various times throughout history. Every few thousand years, sometimes every 10,000 years, we have dramatic changes. This is just a random thing. I don't think it's like human involvement or influence. I think it's like they're doing this on purpose to try to scare shit.
Okay, let's unravel these stupid remarks. Yes, climate has always changed, and you know what accompanies these changes? Mass extinctions. But here's the thing. We know why climate changed in the past and why it's changing now, and we know that it's due to human activity. More importantly, unlike the previous changes in climate, we have humans living along coastlines, and the world is being fed through a few breadbaskets that depend on a stable and predictable climate in order to function. So yes, it's different this time around because not only are we the cause of it, but it will result in droughts, famines, and will even result in a growing number of resource wars. But hey, Richard here doesn't personally know anyone being affected by climate change, so it must not be a real thing, right?
People are just getting more gullible and stupid as time goes on. And
Okay, so here's where I have to agree with Rich. Rich himself is capitalizing on this gullibility and is also hijacking people's growing sense of helplessness and need to feel special. People who fall for these conspiracy narratives are being made to feel like they are an elite part of the few who are woke enough to see through the haze. People who feel disempowered are especially prone to the type of crap that people like this guy are peddling.
Conspiracy thinking is a way to make sense of a complex or mysterious world. More likely when people feel that they lack control or are powerless or being victimized. Studies show that people who generally have a sense that they lack control over their lives or over their world are much more likely to engage in conspiracy thinking. In fact, we often lack detailed information about important political events or other events that occur throughout the world. This opens the door even further to conspiracy thinking because we can fill the gaps in our knowledge with ideas or notions that are comforting or useful in some way. Conspiracy thinking offers the illusion of certainty. In this way, it's very much like superstitious thinking, which provides the illusion of control. Therefore, these two types of thinking meet a basic psychological need.
I remember during the scamdemic in the early months, like let's say it happened, it was around January, February, March that it really started to ramp up in that year. And then it was by like March, it's like, okay, this is happening now. It's a pandemic. Wear masks, stand on your dots, it's social distance. Okay, fine. Maybe this is a real thing.
Right.
A month or two goes by, and I'm like, I'm concerned for my parents. I'm like, look, don't go anywhere. We'll get your groceries. Just chill out. Because they're older, stuff like that. So, and then I'm like, hang on, if this is such a big thing and it's really that bad, why do I not know anybody that's sick or dying or dead? Why does nobody that I know not know anybody that's sick or dying or dead?
This is like saying, I ain't never seen no monkey turn into a human being, so evolution is false. In any case, assuming Cooper is even being truthful, note the sheer ignorance of how the world works. Cooper lives in a country with universal health care. Most of the rest of the world isn't so lucky, and people in developing nations are really screwed when it comes to COVID. Even within Canada, is Rich Cooper's life even remotely typical of the average Canadian? Are the people he knows and interacts with people of lesser means? Or is his circle comprised of people who are well off? So who cares what his anecdotal evidence, assuming he's even being truthful, tells us? And for the record, I don't assume he's being truthful. I think he's pandering to a gullible demographic.
Oh, we really got everybody going in that direction real quick. Everybody gave up on autonomy, on sovereignty, on their own control, and they 75% of the population fell for it, right? Because about 75% got the jabs.
Oh, you mean the 75% who understand how vaccines work and who weren't tricked into thinking this was a ploy by Bill Gates to connect us all to the 5G network? We know from comparative studies that the stricter measures saved lives. Just compare the Nordic countries, who all have similar demographics and quality of healthcare. Sweden, who didn't lock down, had by far the worst outcomes.
I know some people's wives were like, look, I've done it. You need to do it, to protect the household. And the guy's like, fine, whatever, just do it. Yeah, okay.
And there it is. A perfect example of how the Red Pill community centers around demonizing women. Of course, it's the ignorant wife who fell for the quote-unquote scamdemic, who nagged the enlightened non-sheeple husband into getting the 5G chip injected into him. By the way, for the record, I'm the one who nagged my wife into getting her shot.
So the fact that we've got certain organizations, worldwide organizations, saying that they want no one to own anything and you'll be happy.
Yeah.
This is all coming together for the same result. And when you've got certain organizations clearly stating that they don't want you to own things any longer.
Okay, so I finally decided to look into this whole "you will own nothing and you will be happy" thing. No organization is saying this. Rather, this is from an article authored by one member of the World Economic Forum that's warning of a potential future. It's just one of 8 predictions about what the future might look like. It's descriptive, not prescriptive, of a potential future. The WEF is not saying that this is what they want. If anything, it's a warning of a potential future. However, conspiracy hacks peddle this, and gullible people like this unfortunate person uncritically accept and repeat the narrative. It's not an agenda. And here is the irony. These two are talking about how gullible other people are, when in fact they are displaying severe gullibility, scientific illiteracy, and a lack of basic critical thinking.
It doesn't take a lot to put the little pieces together to see what's happening.
Right. One of the forms of thinking that is inherent to conspiracy thinking is pattern recognition. A conspiracy theory is often just that. It is a pattern. In this case, it's a pattern imposed upon disconnected events. You may recall that we discussed pareidolia, the tendency of our brain to impose patterns on random data, such as seeing an image or a face in an oil stain or the bark of a tree or a cloud. Well, conspiracy thinking is like pareidolia, but cognitively. It is seeing a pattern or hyperactive pattern detection in events that are occurring. Essentially, conspiracy theorists will connect the dots and see an invisible hand operating behind the scenes. Pattern recognition is also more common in response to feelings of powerlessness, supporting the notion that conspiracy thinking in part serves this emotional need. Even visual pareidolia becomes more likely in research scenarios where subjects are made to feel more powerless. Conspiracy thinking potentially meets other psychological needs as well, such as self-esteem. It may be a reaction to an inability to attain one's goals. It may, being part of an army of light, for example, offers not only self-esteem, but a way to channel feelings of anger.
Is your ex willing to, like, does she see it from the same perspective that you do, or is she like about more like, comply, scared of
full
smoky
comply.
outside?
That absolutely.
Yeah, that's one of the difficult things when you're divorced, right?
And there it is again. The woman is once again the sheeple in this dynamic. Rich continually harps on over how bad his ex-wife was. Now maybe the true story really is as one-sided, as he continually claims and implies. But I wouldn't mind hearing the other side of the story. Well, that's all for now.